Hello everyone and welcome back to the Legends of Runeterra World Championship. We are getting underway with day 2 and the competition is fierce. To bring you through match 3, we've got Swim and Skarzik coming onto the desk. And Skarzik, I'm so excited to hear your thoughts about how the first couple of matches went for the day.
I mean, the decks came down to some really unfortunate outcomes for both sides, right? But I do want to say that we're getting a small glimpse into the power level of some of these oddball matchups, right? These decks that players aren't necessarily accounting for. We're seeing players a little bit uncertain about how they should mulligan, how they should play, needing to kind of dig into the past to remind themselves how to play these matchups.
Yeah, I think like one of the biggest kind of themes over all of this tournament is everyone's coming from a different region. Everyone's play styles and different deck builds and different ways of like approaching the metagame. What that means is it's really hard to come out and try to like precisely target or precisely craft a specific lineup. And that's why we see a lot of players that almost always do target and craft very specific lineups. Players like Alan, players like Majin Bay, players like What Am I almost always bring their kind of like own spicy like anti-meta lineups. Most of them are bringing almost entirely just like good general value decks that can outplay and outgrind anything.
That's a good point, and I'm so excited about our third match of the day. We're going back to Group C for our match 2 of that group. And Swim, why don't you take it away?
All right, so in Group C, we've got Ragnarosich versus Yamato, and this is going to be a really interesting one. Yamato is on Darkness, the only player bringing Darkness, Draven, Scion, and Plunder. And Skarzik, you want to break down Ragnarosich?
Ragnarosich is on the Sivir Action, of course, the only player to bring Bandle Tree and Ping City. Ping City is ironic in that it's sort of a counter to Bandle Tree, a new evolution of the metagame that we saw a lot of yesterday. And so a lot of players got very scared of bringing Bandle Tree. There was a couple new decks that were targeting it. We've got the advent of these Caitlyn Draven style decks with the Scorched Earth. So Ragnarosich still very confident in what this deck can do.
Yeah, and I think if anything, we might see the Bandle Tree deck getting banned. I think that, I mean, for the most part, it's a scary deck. In a lot of cases, people aren't prepared against it. It's got that surprise value. It looks pretty good into Yamato's lineup overall. I mean, what do you think about Ragnarosich's ban?
Ragnarosich is probably going to ban Scion. Generally speaking, Bandle Tree is pretty even against Scion, but just that big overwhelmed threat. There's always that small chance that you don't have the mini morph and Scion is able to close out. Meanwhile, I think Ragnarosich is very confident into the Plunder, very confident into the Darkness, which is a deck that was very strong and very well loved when Bandle City first came out, but has slowly fallen off because of its ability to brick. It gets some pretty clunky draws. So Ragnarosich could be confident in leaving that deck up, and we'll get a chance to see what Yamato can do with it.
Yep, this is going to be a very interesting one. Like I said, there's so much diversity in this tournament. There's so many spicy lineups. This is the only Bandle Tree lineup versus the only Darkness lineup. But we're seeing almost everything that you can think of that has been meta in the past, at least in some minor way, represented in this Worlds tournament.
And it is important to note for our viewers that this Plunder variant does not have the secret South American Field of Rush technology, but it is still going to be very solid nonetheless. You have the threats of the overwhelm damage, you have that Frostbite that maybe locks out Sivir. This is another consideration. Plunder used to be very powerful in, you know, the pre-Bandle City meta as a way to sort of answer the Sivir with Sejuani's Frostbite ability. So a lot to consider for the players because we have the first level of potential bans, but yeah, here it is, Bandle Tree and Plunder actually being banned here.
Yep, and I think these are really solid bans. The Bandle Tree is a little bit too good into Yamato's lineup, and I actually kind of like the Plunder ban. It's close, but I actually personally think that the Bandle Tree is favored into Scion if you're running 3 mini morphs. But I mean, I might be a little biased because I usually play that side of the matchup, and I think Ragnarosich is feeling the same way. He knows that his Bandle Tree is going to get banned, and he's thinking to himself, okay, if I know I'm not going to be able to play Tree, if I know I'm just playing the Pokestick Gangplank deck and the Sivir Akshan, what would I want to ban? And you ban out the Sejuani in that case off the stats. And I think that's one of the most important things about banning. You have to be thinking about what your opponent's banning before you even decide banning.
Ragnarosich is so fortunate here that Yamato is essentially forced to ban the Vandal Tree, and that gives so much flexibility with being able to be more choosy with yours. So Yamato actually opening up with Darkness here, and Ragnarosich is going to keep it popping here.
Yep, and speaking of poppin', we've got the KDA board music on full display. I like it. I like it. As we're gonna see Darkness versus the
Pink
deck.
City.
This one's gonna be a little bit rough for Darkness.
Darkness does have the means, even though it is a control deck, it does run tons of units, tons of bodies. It can get on the board early and try to block some of this damage, try to stabilize with maybe even Unspeakable Horror being picked up as an extra means of generating a card. A little bit of drain goes a long way. And I think the big theme, right, especially through yesterday and up through today, is a lot of decks just don't have healing. They can't fit it in. Their region combinations don't have access to it. So with a few points of healing here and there, there's a chance that Ragnarosich's Pink City deck runs out of threat, runs out of fuel. With Veigar coming down on round 4, there could be a chance for Darkness to just stack up, stack up, stack up. And as long as you can answer the Gangplank and the Lecturing Yordle for only 2 or 3 mana, it's going to put Yamato in a really strong position.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think a lot of this matchup comes down to the Ishtali Sentinel. It's a 3 of in Yamato's decks, and if we see it being drawn, I mean, that's a huge swing, because if you can't deal with that lifesteal as a burn deck, you're not playing the game.
With 1 Withering Wail and 3 Vile Feast, there's not the overwhelming amount of healing that we've seen in some builds, and it looks like Yamato's just going to be relying on early game units. We've got Catalyzer now as well, which is fantastic.
Yeah, Catalyzer being one of the most important parts of Darkness, just being able to get it triggered just once. The difference between, you know, having a Catalyzer and not having a Catalyzer is a super big deal. It doesn't even need to go off a second time, as we Conchologist into Trinket Trade.
Trinket Trade gonna generate another spell down the road, maybe even getting a prank. We've seen these Pink City decks, right? When you get late into the game, you're usually down to 1 or 2 cards in hand anyway. And so Yamato, if you sit on the Trinket Trade, maybe hoping for a prank, you get eyes on what your opponent's final options are and try to play around them as much as you can. We could see Yamato just stop developing units altogether in order to prevent like good double ups and things of that nature. Veigar seems
I would like
a
see
strong
the Veigar
idea here.
Being able to just block the Onlooker. This is a matchup where you're not really married to Veigar. It's okay if the opponent commits resources into killing him, because for the most part, I mean, you've got Rekindler, and you really just want to stay alive and stabilize. That's your go-to.
And there it is, another pass, another stack for the Darkness, now up to 3 damage. This is going to be really, because just 2 more ticks, get up to 5, and you answer everything in Ragnarosich's lineup.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have to keep track of that one, because it's going to be really awkward if neither of us knows the Darkness counter at any given time.
And Tenor of Terror, though, this is the big thing as well. Like, Yamato doesn't feel the pressure right now, but Ragnarosich has the ability to just go so wide and get this free chip damage thanks to the impact.
Absolutely. I think I'd like to see the Stilted Robemaker come down here. Being able to block one of them and stay alive is really nice, but it's a little bit scary taking that extra damage.
Now that there isn't mana for double up, I think Catalyzer might come down here to cash in.
For the most part, Catalyzer, I think, he goes for the Catalyzer, keeping mana up for Darkness, basically punishing another development, and there it is. I mean, he has the Darkness that can snipe out one of these now.
Yeah. And then Catalyzer would stack it up to 4 if it does block this round, and then if Veigar survives, you go up to 5. This is a situation, however, with no healing in hand. You're going to be dropping down pretty low depending on how you want to allocate your defense.
Yep. And this Veigar will almost certainly have to block, because you just need to trade down this board as much as possible, and it can at least survive. He's playing very protective here, going for the Pokey Stick instead. I think he's trying to rush down with the Veigar face condition.
But in order for that to work, you have to cast the Darkness. There are no other Darkness generators right now except for Senna. And because Stilted Robemaker has not been developed yet, there's not any more spell mana floated. It becomes very awkward here for Yamato to be able to play the Darkness and generate another one and keep the pressure going. Ragnarosich can very easily navigate the Darkness condition by just developing and open attacking, potentially.
Yeah, spending the mana there just to keep the Vigar have a little bit more health feels a little bit aggressive, because now, I mean, you might not be able to protect your Nexus health as much. Usually this is the point of the game against burn decks, and of course, Poke City included. This is where your Nexus health is your primary resource, is your only resource, really.
And now, with double lecturing Yordle, it's just a race to the bottom. Yamato wants the game to go as long as possible for the darkness to stack up, but the timeline just isn't there. If you extrapolate the double Yordle, the Dreadway
darkness
deckhand...
is 5. It's killing one of them right now.
I mean, the line is there, but it's just, do you have the mana? Do you have the time?
That's pretty big. Yamato is just looking for a draw. He's very desperate. At this low health, you need an Ishtali Sentinel or something to be able to stop this aggression. Leveled Gangplank is going to be really, really terrifying as well.
Yeah, and has to make this play going all in versus the threat of Mini-Morph as well, which unfortunately we don't see in Yamato's hand. Stress Defense can help block some of this overwhelm damage, but leveled up Gangplank means that's extra AoE damage going onto the Nexus. We could even see Dreadway Deckhand come down just to double down.
Yamato is thinking about how to stop the most damage here against burn. That's basically all you should ever be thinking about, but it's rough. I mean, the whole point of Ragnarosich's deck is that it's always going to be dealing damage. The Senna comes down threatening a darkness, which is pretty impactful. This can deal with the Gangplank, but the attack is still there, so the trigger is still going off.
So this darkness is up to 6, I think.
6. It is, yep. And that's
so yeah, Senna's
really,
going to
really
get fast
good.
speed darkness. I didn't see that. But again, this deck has become a bit of a rarity. And Senna now, maybe the dynamic duo can stabilize this. A lot of damage still going onto the Nexus. We've got double hidden pathways for Ragnarosich. Very easy to draw into that last little burn that you're going to need.
Yep, one thing that's really big is this Vigar is about to be potentially going down to, of course, the poison dart that we can see in Ragnarosich's hand, and he might just use it there. He could actually go for it on the Nexus instead if he doesn't care about Vigar, if he just opts to burn this out, which would be a good play. He's going for the Senna instead of the Vigar off of the keg. That's interesting. Basically just stopping the darkness generation because he knows the Senna attacking would be another darkness, but the Rekindler is going to be really scary here at bringing her back.
And depending on, because of the 5 plus the 6, there's still a little ways to go to level up the Vagar. So Darkbolt Acolyte could come down just as a hedge, killing this Lecturing Yordle, maybe answering second Gangplank.
Overall, I mean, it's a really, really tough call. If you're sitting there, if you're Ragnarosich, you could send the Poison Dart face. And I mean, Yamato could be at 3 health right now, but the Rekindler is a pretty big punish, potentially, if it comes down later, to being able to just, like, stabilize this board. And Yamato doesn't have the Ishtali Sentinel, so he doesn't really have a way to protect his Nexus health.
I wonder if this is the point in the game where Yamato is finally going to start cashing in these pranks, trying to get some vision on the enemy hand to sculpt these plays a little bit better.
I think for the most part, you can't really favor mana discounts at this point in time. You've just got to make sure you're at least seeing what you're getting off of your own Pokestick, or, you know, setting up some amount of healing if the opponent develops blockers. Goes for 1. Granting 2 cost to a Pathways is nice.
Yeah, it takes away a little bit of that Hail Mary potential of burst speed draw into burn. Put that back up to 5, thank you very much. Maybe a little bit more confident that there's not a second Gangplank lurking. Ragnarosich is doing a great job of bluffing it here, knows the darkness is in hand, and gets...
Shadow Fiend is so bad for him. He's not on his attack turn, and he realizes it's a low roll. He's emoting out of suffering. I've seen that emote before. I've done that emote before. It's pained emote.
Time. It's about time we've seen Mirai Warden low roll just a bit, but now with no threat of Gangplank, darkness is cleared for takeoff, and the Pokestick put ahead of the stack, so Vagar is not going to get on board and leveling to create the next darkness. And now, of course, Rekindler is guaranteed to bring Senna. Stress defense.
Yeah, the stress defense is absolutely, absolutely huge here. It's a big punish. Ragnarosich has a burn as a strategy, right? He could go for the Nexus, but he's scared of heals. He's scared of stuff like Ishtali Sentinel coming out on the board, and in this, the stress defense, keeping Vigar alive is going to be a big punish. Ragnarosich might not have enough damage to kill now. I mean, we see the Vile Fist in Yamato's hand, so Yamato effectively has 6 health. Ragnarosich has 3 damage with the 2 Pokesticks in the Corsair. He's looking for 3 more. I don't know if he has it. The Gangplank top deck is huge, though.
Gangplank with the attack token here coming down, summons a barrel that's more AoE damage that can't go for it because of the darkness.
Yeah, the darkness is too scary, and the Senna development would be even worse.
Yeah, now that Veigar's leveled up, he's going to be passively generating a darkness at the start of each round. So now Ragnarosich is in a pickle where you have to make do with what you can play. You could play Gangplank specifically for the barrel, just to get extra damage on your Pokey Stick here.
The most important
5
thing
mana
is
plus 1 damage to the Nexus.
right now, when you're against Burn, the only thing that matters is your Nexus health. For both players, it's just Yamato's Nexus health that matters here. And the only way he can minimize his damage to the Nexus is by saving the Vile Feast until the keg comes down. Because that way, you could lifesteal off of the keg and stop a point of damage. But if that happens, this turn, Ragnarosich has the second Pokestick to reuse the keg, and then the Vile Feast actually gets punished. That would be lethal this turn, Skarzik. If it goes Gangplank into that chain, that's lethal this turn if the Vile Feast actually gets killed by the second Pokestick, if the lifesteal can't happen.
And even with the extra mana cost in the Pokestick, I think that play still goes through.
There's not enough mana now because the Gangplank would have to come down.
Oh, thank goodness.
There's 1 mana short, Ragnarosich, 1 mana short of being able to execute that. But that would have been such a punish.
The pranks, Yamato saving those from way earlier in the game for this moment now when Ragnarosich has fewer resources in hand.
This is
doesn't have eyes on this Gangplank.
2-turn clock. This is very, very scary.
Now with 12 HP on Ragnarosich, Veigar surviving till next round most likely. That's going to be ticking the darkness up to 10 damage.
Yamato has puff caps in his deck. These puff cap draws could be lethal right now. He can't use Pokestick. He's too afraid of drawing into his own deck. No puff caps on the Ishtali Sentinel. This has the lifesteal. Is he actually stable here? Is there a way? If he can get the lifesteal off once, he's good. If he can kill the Nexus this turn with Veigar, he's good. Is there anything that can stop the Veigar's double darkness on face? I think he's just going for it. But if he goes for the double darkness on face, the double Pokestick to try to represent lethal with the kegs has to be good. A single Pokestick would come out, but Yamato has 2 protections, 2 different ways to kill the keg. So he goes Pokestick for lethal on the 2 kegs. Yamato has both answers. He has the Vile Feast and his own Pokestick. So Yamato has to win here.
Unbelievably close game once again. And even my count was off. Darkness is actually only up to 9, but it doesn't matter here.
Ragnarosich doesn't have to go in yet. The Senna gets played, and now he knows that it's over. He knows he has to try to go in for the
5 mana
sticks.
hidden pathways. We haven't seen a single Make It Rain yet.
It actually is possible.
Units.
It actually is possible to pull the Make It Rain. But he didn't hit it, and now I think Yamato just has this. I mean, he has enough mana to protect. Pokestick is going to be preemptive, and Yamato is just going to have the ability to not only threaten the face with darkness, but also ping off the keg, keep himself alive through this, and if he uses Vile Feast, he's not even risking dying to shrooms.
This is so strong, and this is all thanks to Stilted Robemaker discounting the darkness. Second Pokestick goes down, and we have the protection.
There's the Vile Feast, and the Darkness deck is able to take it. Darkness versus Burn, top taking the Ishtali Sentinel, even after it was too late, still doesn't matter, still able to keep that Veigar alive and just chugging away at it. Ragnarosich trying to kill the Veigar ended up kind of being his downfall there. If he had just gone for the face, he probably would have had enough.
And that's one of the things you have to consider with this list, right? As a newer deck in the metagame that's looking to mostly counter Bandle Tree, you have to consider what your position is in a lot of the other matchups. When you're playing Burn, and we've seen it time and time again, especially with Pirate Aggro, where if you have to send a Noxian Fervor to kill a unit or something, instead of sending it directly to the face, that loss of damage could come back to haunt you. And we'll see if Ragnarosich maybe adapts their play going forward, but picking up the win with Darkness, a very unexpected, underappreciated deck, I would even say, is so huge for Yamato here, going into set point now in game 2.
Absolutely. So now Yamato just needs to win with Draven Scion, one of the powerhouses of the meta in this tournament. We're seeing all the different Draven versions, but for the most part, they're using similar Lost Soul oriented strategies, just kind of like infinite value exchange. The Scion in this case is going to come down, try to end the game on turn 7.
And this is a pretty interesting opening hand. There is the greedier line of just passing here, going for Boom Baboon, so you have a better target for your Sump Dredger. Draven on 3 with the attack token will be quite nice, and thanks to, again, the infinite value, so to speak, of the Lost Soul, you have just continuous chump blockers as well as board control against all of the pings that are potentially trying to remove your board and generate tempo.
Yep, this is usually it's one of the most balanced matchups in the game. Neither deck is particularly favored here. It just comes down to who has the more aggressive hand, because this matchup is very, very much a race down. If Yamato is able to get the Scion on turn 7 and just win the game off of that, then Ragnarosich is going to have to kill him before that happens.
Is attacking on odd turns, which is huge. You can have the Scion set up and just attack. Ragnarosich, meanwhile, won't be able to take advantage of a gangplank on 5 per se. But we did see Yamato opt for Zonai Urchin here on turn 1. Does want the defense.
Yep. And you're definitely going to play that Baboon and block this. And whoa, Yamato is not playing that Baboon. That's very, very interesting. He's banking spell mana. He could have taken some blocks, bricked out some of the pings that could be coming from Ragnarosich later, but I think he doesn't really mind the pings because, of course, you know, the keg is there. So the Baboon is going to stay on the board.
Yeah, just plays the Baboon after the thought, gets the ability to open attack now, drag this barrel, put pressure down. Yep. And what this does is you have just the Baboon in play, right? There was a chance if you play the Baboon, Ragnarosich just doesn't attack at all, sets up a really strong Make It Rain or something to wipe and try to get tempo that way.
Yeah, I mean, Yamato is playing a very, very defensive and reactive line with this. You know, I mean, the Draven could definitely go in and get a free attack, get some free potential chip damage. This is an interesting line. And just wants to make sure he's setting up for the Scion, basically.
Mm-hmm. Playing all for the Scion. That big overwhelm damage and rally is really all you're going to need. Ragnarosich as well is going to be taking a lot of damage here in the early mid game, simply because a deck like this gets a lot of its mileage out of just being wider than the opponent.
Yep. Is a pretty big draw by Yamato, because he could be about to hit a level Draven. If this attack goes through on the Lecturing Yordle, Draven could survival skills and the axe and Whirling Death, and that would be a level up.
And then having that overwhelm pressure in the mid game just sets up even further for Scion. If Ragnarosich drops too low, that overwhelm is looking to end the game.
Exactly. Now this is interesting. He's going for the Whirling Death on, of course, the Yordle. You've got to basically just kill this before it becomes a threat. And Draven is leveling up after this. This is going to start generating a lot more axes as well, but just mostly pressure, because Scion decks do need to be able to put out some amount of pressure. They don't just kill the Nexus in one. You have to get them down to like 10 health first.
Yes, yes. We've got the Scion just ready to go. Draven now being leveled up is great because you're getting 2 axes, and this means that a top deck Rummage or something is a little bit less clunky for your hand. Poison Dart actually being put on the Draven, trying to soften this up for the Make It Rain and the group shot. I do really like that. Ragnarosich, even though there was a bit of a punish last game for not sending absolutely everything to the face, is recognizing the implication here of a quick attack overwhelm.
Yep, exactly. And this is the big problem with Yamato's deck into this lineup, especially with these draws, is that you just have so many 1-health units. I mean, look at Ragnarosich's hand right now. The Make It Rain, the double TFs that could be red cards. I mean, even group shot is just like ways of killing these cards for free. So Yamato's going to have a hard time actually establishing real chip damage. In this situation, he needs cards like Sump Dredger that are going to be threats that, you know, don't die immediately.
Yeah, so just has to go for it by forcing your opponent to spend mana reactively like this. They have a little bit less of a chance to finish your post-combat development. Group Shot, exactly. Such a strong card there. 1 mana, deal 1. Always a classic. We've seen some versions of this list actually swap out the Group Shot for Parley, but there having it fast speed is just amazing.
That's exactly right. For those of you guys who are kind of like new to watching Runeterra at a high level, the name of the game is reactivity, right? You just want to be able to, you know, commit after you see what the other person is doing. And a lot of that is doing like little non-committal forms of pressure and then kind of waiting to see what they do. So that's why you would open attack with the Draven here, just making sure that you're not giving your opponent more information before you have to, because they have to deal with the Draven.
And Yamato, we said earlier, is trying to play a reactive defensive game, and Ragnarosich is actually doing a good job of mirroring that style. Going for Mirai Warden here, still fulfilling that low-pressure, wide game plan to keep the threat level high, but reserving mana for the Twisted Fate here. If a big unit is committed, gold card comes down to make the attack even sweeter, and a red card here already wiping 2 defenders.
Yeah, that's a really, really big deal, especially for the offensive pressure. This is going to be nasty for Yamato. Another thing about this situation, by the way, is I think this is going to be the rare not leveled Scion on turn 7. The almost never before seen not leveled Scion on turn 7. Yamato's hand does not really have the beef that Scion's going to need to be leveled on 7.
Yeah, even though Scion counts himself when he comes into play, I have seen it one other time where Scion comes into play not leveled.
Lost Soul as a draw might actually change that. Scion is going to be pretty close to leveling after that. But, I mean, this pressure from Ragnarosich is looking really, really good for him. And his hand is just not going to run out of burn options. You've got draw, you've got TF's pick a card, you've got, of course, the hidden pathways. And that deck is designed to just draw always into more burn options, the impacts, the puff caps. And Yamato is not having any way of stabilizing this or healing. He's just going to have to block to stop the maximum.
So far, it's been pure defense from Yamato. The Lost Soul arriving in the hand so late means that you were robbed of that ability to start controlling the board throughout the mid game, and it's allowed Ragnarosich to get this wide board.
Aww. And you see what he's doing here, Skarsek. I love this. Yamato realizes that if he kills this Twisted Fate, a second Twisted Fate in the hand would turn back into Twisted Fate. And that enables Gold Card. Yamato knows that he can't kill the Twisted Fate with a Mystic Shot. He has to kill something else instead because he can't enable Ragnarosich's ability to play a second Twisted Fate Gold Shot. He's bricking it in his hand. He's playing around it perfectly, and the Scion is not going to here because of it.
Unfortunate that there was a Ravenous Flock needed to be cashed in on defense. We've seen some players use it in order to kill their own Scion and get the rally, but here it is, turn 7. This is the big play. You have to commit to the Scion here.
The scary thing, though, is that, I mean, you can't kill in one turn, and, I mean, at 9 health against this burn deck, you are just going to be getting pelted. I mean, how do you survive that? If Scion can't win the game on the turn, it's
just from the impact. We've got Lecturing Yordle about to come down. Hidden Pathways is beautifully timed here for the reload in the late game for Ragnarosich.
Yeah, it's really, really nasty. Yamato just needs a little bit more health, but I don't think he has it. He's going to take a risky open pass. He wants to see exactly what's happening first. I think he's happy if Ragnarosich actually passes here because he just wants to burn his mana. Didn't get the pass. He tried to bait it out.
Yeah, Yamato wants to maybe bluff. There's some flexibility here, but
exactly,
there's no utility with the hand. If there's another Rummage, some way to get another discard activator, you could maybe go for a line of, you know, Twin Blade Revenant plus something, but oh my god, yeah, Scion's not leveled yet.
It's the unleveled Scion on turn 7, the never before seen. And it's so unfortunate because it's so rare. I mean, you almost always have hands that are going to be good enough to push that. And we're just going to start chipping away at Yamato's health. Down to 8.
Yeah, just overwhelmed here. There was not enough pressure from Yamato to set up in order to make Scion a threat. And here it is. Ragnarosich sees the opportunity to cash in the Twisted Fate. And this means that you have the backup gold card for when that Scion does eventually level, when it eventually does pop and rally.
Exactly. It's so bizarre. Twisted Fate is one of these champions. Both players realize that him being dead is a good thing for Ragnarosich, right? You just want to enable the second Twisted Fate to give you the ability for red card to push damage, blue card to repopulate. Although Ragnarosich might be reconsidering because he's thinking about, you know, the damage, the thing he got off of that. He could go for a pick a card. Gonna sack the Twisted Fate here. Gold card is just too much of a safety card here.
Yeah, it's so much of a huge safety net versus the Scion. Rummage is nice. But I mean, what are you going to do?
Could be a weird bailout for Yamato.
Yeah, it can draw you some more units to try to go wide against this board. We've got Twisted Fate gold card to stop one blocker. And already we've got, you know, +2 now on the attack. Lecturing Yordle about to generate a poison dart, double up, no longer part of the equation, but we could see Tenor of Terror come down, and that level of just burn damage coming through, and Flame Chompers
I mean, if he rummages into a Get Excited or a Mystic Shot, this Scion will die. And it will rally with the leveled Scion. That's pretty big, but I don't know if he can survive this turn. There's the Get Excited, but it's attached to a Puff Cap. That's damage.
Yeah, with Scion, if you kill it and he revives, it would be an unstunned fresh copy.
But the double up is blocking that. As long... Oh, Ragnarosich doesn't have mana for double up. This is actually huge. Ragnarosich needs to put on this pressure. The Tenor of Terror is going to be really big. And I think with the stunned Scion, I don't see a way for Yamato to survive this.
Yep, just a wide attack coming in for game 2.
I mean, that has to be it. The impact damage is 3 inevitable. You don't have enough blockers. This is always going to be, at the very least, exact lethal. And even if there's no Puff Cap drawn, it looks like Ragnarosich is good for game 2. Man, almost all of these games are going to game 3.
Game 3 is the name of the game. When the players are this high leveled and the matchups are so close, like, this is what we saw all yesterday, and I am here for it. I want to see as many games from these highly skilled players as possible.
All right, and we've got 1 health left off of the Get Excited. He's able to stop 1, and there's just no way out of this with the Make It Rain, with potential double up. I mean, there's no possible way Yamato can survive here, unfortunately.
Yeah, all the burn goes on the stack. There's only 2 targets in play, which means that Make It Rain is guaranteed to hit the Nexus here.
All right. Now, the one thing that's in Yamato's favor, though, is as we are getting into game 3, the Akshan Sivir deck, Ragnarosich will have to win with, and Draven Scion is typically considered a bit favorable into Akshan Sivir.
Yeah, you have that great amount of early board presence to keep up with them snowballing you. You've got the Twin Blade Revenant to help keep the board even as well. As long as Yamato can get a Lost Soul in the hand early, because that's what we saw for this game, is the Lost Soul showed up super late, and it just didn't get the value that it's known for.
All right, so both players down to their last decks. It's going to be the Draven Scion against the Akshan Sivir. A pretty standard version of Akshan Sivir coming out by Ragnarosich here, using the old school method of Ruin Runner, actually. What do you think about that that tech, Scars? Like a much more like offensive oriented one. It's going to be better against like Noxus control styles.
Yeah, sticking with the Ruin Runner means that you're looking to punish a lot of these very low to the ground Bandle City decks, I think. And the switch to, as we've seen, like Screeching Dragon and Vakuran Bruiser is a lot better for the mirror match.
Yeah, I mean, the Spell Shield is going to come in handy against Yamato's more control-oriented version of Draven Scion with stuff like Ravenous Block and Mystic Shot. These controlled Noxus decks are actually, like, part of the reason they're so good right now is off of the Ruin Runner nerf. Ruin Runner, as a 6/4 Spell Shield, was holding back those decks' ability to perform. It was just so hard to deal with, and we might see a bit of a resurgence of that in this Game 3.
And so getting into it, we do have Lost Soul in the opening hand now for Yamato. Ragnarosich has some reactivity. The Quicksand is a very interesting tech as well to take care of that overwhelm. But gets the rest of the early game package with Fleet Feather Tracker, really hoping for Akshan or Bright Steel Protector to go along with this.
Yep. Yamato's got his value generation. The Lost Soul is perfect here. It's absolutely what you want in outgrind situations like this. He's going to keep the Lost Soul and keep the discard for it, and I like it. This matchup will come down to the long-term resource exchange or a Scion just kind of like trying to blow out the board.
And now that you've got Lost Soul number 2 coming through in the opening hand, Scion most likely will then be leveled up when he comes down like he's supposed to.
Yeah, there's no way that happens again.
I mean, offering the trade here, wants to just get the Fleet Feather Tracker off of the board.
We can see Yamato's pretty favored here because of Ragnarosich's pretty, that's even more clunky opening hands. I mean, the double tracker without any units to follow it up, and just reactive spells and a Preservarium this early is not what you want to see.
Decides to float the mana, has Draven on 3 here. Ragnarosich can respond with, just the Vagabond, gets this Warlord Palace ticking down.
And the Draven's just going to be absolutely huge here. Just the chip damage it deals is just monumental off of Quick Attack. It's such a good keyword, and you're generating free axes. That's free value, especially in this deck that has so many ways of using them.
Yeah, we've got the Rummage all ready to go now with 2 pieces of discard fodder, even 3, if you want the second Lost Soul to be revealed.
Man, I gotta say, it's all coming up for Yamato as he looks incredibly favored in this game so far.
Yeah, because now you've got the Twin Blade Revenant to come down, start pressuring any mid-game development with no potential to Merciless Hunter here to respond to this. This means that Ragnarosich is going to fall even further behind thanks to the Challenger and the Quick Attack. There was that rare opportunity for Yamato to just freely swing with the Draven because there was no spell mana floated, and now that Ragnarosich is under so much pressure, there's even less opportunity to keep reserving that spell mana. You have to spend everything you have on developing onto the board and protecting what you have.
Exactly, and these 3 health units are not vulnerable to the, the Fleet Feather Tracker, and I mean, Ragnarosich does not really have any early game at all. The Sivir top deck, though, might turn things around.
Whenever we see Sivir Akshan in a tight spot, there is always that quick attack, that spell shield, the extra value from the Warlord's Palace finally being added to the hand that really allows them to swing games. But second Twin Blade Revenant is just going to reinforce Yamato's position, wanting to maintain a dominant state here. And I'm wondering, you could even sacrifice your 4-3, pull it to the side.
Yeah, absolutely.
To nullify the barrier here, because it's a unit that you're going to kind of get back.
Yeah, you have that ability. I mean, I expect Yamato to probably just play for the long-term outgrind and just skip an attack with Draven and the other Revenant here. Just pick off the tracker you can. I think it's definitely... I mean, this is a matchup, especially in this board state, that will just come down to the long-term attrition, and you're not really looking to get in any just, like, short-term value here.
This is the point where you do need to start respecting the sharp sight. The presence of the Twin Blade Revenants has kept Ragnarosich from developing a lot of the power cards he was hoping to, but we can see, of course, that it's all reactivity, all spells, and now with both Twin Blade Revenants leaving the field, this does open up a chance for Sivir to come down.
Oh, that's a pretty big deal. Yamato does have the ability to Mystic Shot this, debating whether he wants to use a Mystic Shot just to deal with a 3-3. You always have to be aware of Sivir, and Mystic Shot is one of the few ways to potentially take off his spell shield if you might have cards in your hand later that need that. Because, I mean, you need to deal with Sivir unless you're killing with a Scion really, really quickly. No Scion in hand.
No Scion in hand. And there is Arachnoid Sentries as well in the list to help with the spell shields. There is, of course, Survival Skills lurking here in Yamato's hand, and this is going to make it very awkward for Ragnarosich to be able to attack safely.
We see the perils of course, new wave discard, which is that Yamato's hand is full. Yeah, it's a discard deck, but he actually just has a full hand. He can't even rummage here if he wants to discard the souls.
And so with Sivir entering the battlefield, Yamato will maybe just need to develop the Boom Baboon. Draven's going to get pulled to the side here, potentially killed by the Shaped Stone as well. You really love to see that.
Yep, absolutely. And we do have the ability to survival skills either of our units and try to block the Sivir with the survival skills. This is one of the reasons why I like the survival skills here, because it does a really, really good job into quick attacks, and it's one of the big counters. Ragnarosich does have the response. I expect the quick sand to come down in response.
Hey, buddy, what you doing?
And does indeed go for it, wants to get the Sivir off of the board. This version from Yamato is only running 1 copy of Survival Skills, so this is all cashed in, and this is just going to remove the attack power from Draven. He still will survive, but this just protects the Sivir, and that's really all you want.
Yeah, and it stops an extra. It's a very, very swingy quicksand. It's a little bit risky to run in the deck because sometimes it can brick out, but when it hits big. And now it's up to Yamato to start putting on pressure with this Scion, because there's not really an answer to Scion in Ragnarosich's deck, and that's why Scion is generally considered a bit of a counter to Akshan Sivir. The Scion will come down next turn, and this time it's going to be leveled.
With the quicksand out of the equation, that overwhelm from Scion is also going to be so massive here.
Exactly.
But with survival skills out of the equation on Yamato's side, this means that there is a lot more flexibility for Sivir to attack, and now Scion coming through indeed.
And this just looks absolutely disastrous for Ragnarosich. I don't see how he can come back from this one. I mean, he needs multiple ways of dealing with all these Scions. Even if he top decks Concerted Strike or Single Combat, that will help, but I don't know if it'll be enough.
The saving grace, I suppose, from this position is simply that there is 17 HP, so it is pretty difficult for Scion to just straight up end the game here with the right developments from Ragnarosich, but the pressure, not just even if you live, the pressure of having to trade away ropes because your board is gone, and guess what? I still have Lost Soul, Twin Blade Revenant, keeping me fueled up, keeping that pressure from letting you even redevelop a board after this.
Oh, there's the Cataclysm. Cataclysm is going to be big here because there's no re-response on the side of Yamato. So we do have the ability to just pick off the Scion here. I'm assuming the Cataclysm has to come down, of course, after he's fishing for the card he wants. And that's going to be really good because when you can kill the first Scion and force the rally while the attack token is already there, then you basically just stop his effect from moving off. Now you're still taking a lot of damage, and the second Scion in hand is still going to be a problem, but we now have an answer.
And we'll see what Ragnarosich wants to pick up off of the Relic here. It is a predict into a draw. You get to look at those 3 cards. Gets the Golden Aegis. Is working on a plan here. Is working on a comeback.
Ooh. Wait a second. He's not going for the Scion. He's going for the Twin Blade Revenant? What is this?
Wants to kill this challenger.
It looks
set
like
up
he's
a better trade
ignoring
of
the
Sivir.
Scion completely. Maybe the Aegis changed that decision.
Because now the Flame Chompers can pull. You do have Shape Stone to trade up, but your board is still going to potentially go down.
This is a little bit dicey. I think killing the Scion there probably had to be the safer play.
Like you already said, it overwrites. It wastes their rally because the attack token hadn't been spent yet.
Yep, and at 1 mana, you know, Yamato had no answer to that. But the play Ragnarosich made is basically saying he's trying to end the game next turn. And I mean, if he has more access to rally, if he gets an Absolver off of the Preservarium with another rally, he might be able to do it. I mean, the Sivir is almost leveled.
Yeah, you just take the 10 damage here and just your opponent's not going to rally regardless and try to smash through with the Sivir here. There is Preservarium in hand still for a draw. There's the Aegis for the rally. There is potential here for some crazy combo to come together for Ragnarosich. We've seen Sivir pull off some ridiculous comebacks now and again.
Honestly, going for the Twin Blade Revenant there might actually be pretty big brain because Ragnarosich, I mean, he's back's in a corner.
That he did chump the Scion, there is Ravenous Flock now to pop it and get the rally.
The Flock tech coming out, slaying the Scion.
I really thought he was going to just take that 10 damage and try to end it next round, recognizing
and that's it. The Flock threatening the Scion, Ragnarosich concedes, and Yamato is our winner.
Picks up the set, running Darkness. You just need that smart ban of the Banditry, the deck that was the biggest threat to your lineup, and with some skilled piloting, it all comes together.
Absolutely. I mean, Darkness is a deck that we've seen kind of like splash in these tournaments. It's definitely a fringe pick, but it is definitely the kind of deck that you can run in specific tournament lineups where you have that safety ban for some bad matchups, and it's able to squeak some wins through against some metas.
In a slower, grindier matchup, it really comes through, and there's only a handful of players that are still confident with it, and Yamato definitely is one of those players.
I mean, that's just the power of having a Scion leveled up, right?